Welcome to episode number 5 of our series called Remembering Coach Smolinski. We're so glad you're able to join us and kind of go down memory lane and really, share these stories about Coach Smo, the way he impacted so many young men and so many students as an elementary school teacher at Armour as well. We've been able to kind of, through these conversations, kind of boil it down and kind of pinpoint what Coach Smo's legacy really was within the community and specifically within the baseball program. Today, we've got a special treat for you. We've got a really dynamic guest, none other than 1983 grad and team captain, Scott Rusert. Scott's got a great story. After graduating and having a great career at Hamburg, he went on, had a great career at Dartmouth, and eventually landed in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So we've got another long-distance call tonight that we're extremely excited about. Him and his wonderful family have planted their roots and made Minneapolis their home. But make no mistake about it, he took a lot of Hamburg with him, specifically the stuff that he learned from Coach Smo. Scott's stories are full of awesome details. And we'll get into more stories about that infamous Boston Town League that we've heard so much about. So big thank you to Scott and all of our other guests that have helped make this series possible. And without further ado, here's Scott Rusert. Well, folks, we have hit the jackpot once again. We've got another tremendous guest, a long-distance guest. We're bringing in 1983 graduate and team captain, Scott Rusert. And Scott's coming in from Minneapolis, Minnesota with us tonight. I can't believe how fortunate we are, Scott. Thanks for jumping in, buddy.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'll tell you, the good fortune's mine, in all honesty. I'm flattered that you're even interested in talking to an old guy like me to get some stories here. I mean, happy to do it.
And I'm just so excited. And I want to kind of introduce you to, all our, viewers, listeners, and so forth before we get into Coach Smo. So you graduate in 83. Take us through your journey through Dartmouth, Princeton, and how exactly you landed and planted roots in Minneapolis.
Sure. All right. And I'll try and do it faster than when we were talking before. So graduated Hamburg 83 and went to Dartmouth undergrad. Was a football and baseball player there. Was recruited to play both and had the good fortune of that thanks to the coaches in Hamburg, Van Valkenburg and Coach Smo, obviously. And I'd say Gene Seidlich too, who was a former baseball coach, but he was my defensive coordinator when I was a football player at Hamburg. So 4 years at Dartmouth, and then I was a football coach for a season after I graduated from Dartmouth. I was a football coach at Princeton, coached outside linebackers there on their varsity team. I had the good fortune of getting to know Jason Garrett and a few other folks, a few other guys who were there at the time. Then I was already into law school, into UB Law School. I had deferred. So when I finished up coaching at Princeton that season, I moved to New York City, lived there for a year and a half, working for a law firm. Then did UB Law School for 3 years from 89 to 92. And then moved to Minnesota with my wife, who I met in New York City, who's from Minneapolis originally. Mm-hmm. So we moved out here right after I had spent a summer here after my second year of law school, fell in love with it, and decided this is where we wanted to be and had an offer to come out here. So moved out here in 92 and been here ever since.
And the rest is history. How about that?
Yeah.
That's so cool. So, yeah, we, what's brought us together tonight, and I'm so thankful that we've had a chance to connect and so forth. But, we're remembering a great coach, a great man, and a great leader. And so we'll kind of walk back the clock a little bit. What was your first experience? Do you remember, as you crossed the street over, to join the high school in 10th grade, what were some of your first memories of Coach Smo?
Well, I'll tell you, so the first memory of Coach Smo was actually still from the other side of the street over in the junior high. I messaged some guys today from the 82 team, a few guys from Kevin Majewski, Carl Larson, Ward Johnson, Jim Boswell. Boz was in 82. The other guys are 83s. To ask if they had any stories. And Kevin Majewski remembered and reminded me that when we were 8th graders trying out for the freshman team, Coach Smo came over and gave a talk to everybody trying out for the team, and especially to the 8th graders, and said, it's good that you're trying out, but it's a tough thing to make the team as an eighth grader, and don't be discouraged if you don't make it. There's always next year. And what Majewski remembered was that then Coach Smo put his hands on Majewski's shoulders and squeezed him. And Majewski took it as like, what are you talking about? Like, you're telling me I'm not going to make this team? I'm going to make this team.
Yeah, yeah.
And he did. We had, as it turned out, we had probably 7 or 8 guys make that freshman team as eighth graders. And Majewski he said he told that story to Coach Smo a couple years later, that he said it motivated him to try even harder. And Coach Smo said, I wasn't squeezing your shoulders to tell you, to console you. I was squeezing your shoulders to say, I'm not talking to you. You're one of the guys who's going to make it. So that was the first encounter with him.
Okay.
Was then, but then obviously back over on the senior high side, I'd say JV baseball. We started playing JV in '80, so we'd see him during the tryouts for that and some of the shared practices with the varsity at that time. And I'll tell you, I mean, it was a different world, man. I mean, from Pete James to Coach Smo was quite a difference. Energy levels for sure.
Yeah. So I think I didn't appreciate this. So you guys had a varsity team, a JV team, a freshman team, and then would you call it a junior high team then?
No, there wasn't a junior high team. So there was a freshman, JV, and varsity.
Okay. I gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. So,
but they would let, for the freshman team, anybody could, 7th grade and up could try out. I actually started trying out for that team when I was in 7th grade.
Nice. Yeah. So yeah, I'm interested in that transition as you kind of talked about, as you're getting into varsity, like the energy levels and stuff. What was the culture like in the program at that time?
It was I got to say, Coach, I mean, I think I mentioned it in one of the Twitter comments. He was kind of a Herb Brooks type. I wouldn't say not quite as rough and strict as Herb Brooks. I mean, in the sense that he wanted his players to hate him, but he was a disciplinarian. I mean, it was his program and you did things his way. And I mean, he always called us gentlemen. This is what we're going to do. And it was sort of that kind of structure. But then it was also, like I said, this high energy thing where, I mean, he'd whistle. He'd have this whistle that, he could sort of purse his lips and do that high pitched piercing whistle. And he would do that whenever he wanted some energy going.
Okay.
And so usually almost always during fungos, he would be whistling and yelling and where he wanted the ball to go. And so like the first encounter with him, you're in tryouts in the gym, and he's absolutely ripping these ground balls at you on the gym floor. And this is tryouts, seeing who can field the ball and manage. And he would hit it so hard as he could. And he'd be whistling and shouting, and there's just the echo in the gym is just like, I can feel it already again.
Yeah.
And then if there was enough room, if it wasn't too wet, we'd go out into the parking lot, and he'd be ripping ground balls on the asphalt parking lot. And I think there was part of him that really sort of, he took pleasure in that. Like, I'm going to see who can really handle the heat here.
Sure.
And if he saw someone who could feel it, it would make him want to work that much harder to see if he could put one through him. And it was fun. I'll tell you that. That's my first recollection of that is like these tryouts in that gym and this whistling and wicked fungos.
Oh my gosh. One of the common themes, and I was so excited yesterday, we kind of dove into some of the yearbooks that we had up in the library. And I tell you,
So you saw a lot of center parted hair, didn't you?
Yeah, I saw some interesting styles, that's for sure. One of the common themes I couldn't help but notice by like the 5th or 6th yearbook I picked up was his teams seem to have a knack for finishing strong, and really building momentum throughout the year. And I think your group, maybe your senior year, maybe finished like on a 5-game winning streak or won 5 of your last 6 or something like that. And I just don't think that's an accident. What do you attribute that to?
I think what would I attribute that to? I'd say it's the way there's no quit. There's no such thing as quitting with Coach Smo. And so, I mean, if you're down this game, you're still going to work to try and come back. And if you lost this one, you're not going to quit. You're going to find a way to win.
Yeah.
And so, a team never gave up. I mean, even if you didn't necessarily have the best record, I mean, it was still, then there's another game to play, and we're going to go out and win that game.
Yeah.
And I'd say, that's probably what I would attribute it to, is like there's no quitting.
That's so cool, because I think a lot of times, teams do start to take on the personality of their coach, and that's pretty cool. It sounds like that kind of came through.
Oh yeah, well he insisted on the team taking on that personality.
Yeah. Now, so you're a team captain in '83. What were his expectations, or did you get a feel for what he expected out of the captains and what your role was going to be that year?
We had a different team that year, so that we had a ton of returning guys. And I didn't even remember it now. I remembered we had a lot of returning guys, but I looked back at some old clippings and some scrapbooks that my parents had kept. So my junior year, we had a great team. I mean, we were like, I looked at the record, said we were 15-4.
Wow.
And that team had 14 juniors on it. There were only 4 seniors.
Okay.
So we were a really veteran team coming back with high expectations that senior year. And so it was a different kind of captaincy, in the sense that it's like there aren't young guys that you're looking to bring along or mentor. It's try and build cohesion among this group of players who in many ways have been playing together since 8th grade. And so I think that was the expectation, was to make sure we were a cohesive unit, and to stay focused. I mean, you think about it, senior spring is a time when the minds are starting to wander a lot. You're almost done, school's almost done. And if you're not necessarily planning on doing something afterwards, it's like, well, it's easy to start breaking some rules. So I think he wanted us to stay focused on the commitment to that team, and the pledges that we'd signed, and making sure that we were honoring all that. And so I think that's what he expected. Chris Clark and I were the captains that year, and Chris was an amazing pitcher, man. I mean, if Clark was on the mound, there was a good chance you were going to win that game.
Yeah.
For sure. So I think for us, I mean, the expectation of us was just keep everybody on the same page.
Yeah. Those are the great captains. Those are the special ones that can keep everybody focused.
Well, we didn't have a great record, so I may not have done a great job. I think our senior year we had a losing record. I looked, and I didn't remember this, but we were only 7-8, which surprises me, because I thought we were a much better team than that. So clearly the captains didn't do their job.
Oh dear. What do you take us through? Can you picture what the starting infield and outfield looked like, or what do you remember about your lineup?
Well, let's see. That third base was it alternated. It was either going to be Carl Larson or Kevin Majewski, who I mentioned. And if Majewski wasn't at third, he was probably going to be in the outfield, because he was really fast too. Okay. So he'd bounce back and forth. I played shortstop. A guy named Mike Williamson was our second baseman. Fred Hopefinger was our first baseman.
Okay.
Ward Johnson was our starting catcher. And Mike Palisano, who we talked about, would also step in and play. Sometimes Ward would DH.
Okay.
And Palisano would go behind the plate. The outfield, I'm trying to remember now. Alan Thomas, for sure, was in the outfield. I think Majewski played a fair amount of outfield. And who else? That might have been one of the juniors we could have had out there. I don't remember now, but I mean, it was like I said, it was a senior heavy team.
Wow. I am so impressed that you remember all the names and can visualize that lineup like that. That is...
Well, okay. I mean, I looked at some pictures, obviously. Some team photos helped. Although, honestly, I don't think I would have needed to look at a team photo to remember that.
Yeah.
And honestly, I mean, remembering that our junior year team, very similar lineup to what we're talking about there. But we had Jim Boswell was in the outfield. He was fantastic. Bozzy was a Boston kid and could absolutely fly. and we had Mike Whitmire as our first baseman. Whit was fantastic. What a first baseman. Whit and I had played together since Hamburg Junior Baseball League. Since we were 10, we'd known each other. And our second baseman was Greg Dake, another Boston guy. And then Chris DeToom, fantastic athlete. He and Ward Johnson would alternate between catching and DHing on that team. And then Williamson and I, we were both shortstops. And I played most of it. We would platoon now and then. Willie was a left-handed hitter. So every once in a while, if Smo had it in his head that he wanted a lefty against a strong righty, he'd move me to a different spot and put Willie in, which I was never a big fan of, but that's life, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So true. So eventually, I guess, describe your relationship with Smo, because you're out of the town, out of the area for a while. Were you able to stay connected with Coach Smo after graduation, or when you?
Yeah, I did. So one of the things well, this sounds sort of corny. I invited him to my graduation party.
Okay.
And he didn't go to a lot of graduation parties. He'd go to a few. I know Rick Sambrato last night mentioned that Coach Smo went to his, which doesn't surprise me. And when he came to mine, and he's like, you know what, I appreciate you inviting me, and it means a lot to me, and that's why I wanted to be here, and I was glad to have you on the team, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that kind of that sort of linked in that we were going to stay connected.
Right. Yeah.
And then he knew I was playing at Dartmouth, and when I'd come back in the summers, I'd see him because I played town ball for Boston.
Okay.
I played on that was it the Suburban League team. There was like two leagues that was basically the same teams. I want to say one of them they called like the Lake Shore League that played on Friday nights, and then the Suburban League played on the weekends. Okay. But it was still all the same teams. And so I had started playing on that Boston team. I want to say, I think it was after my sophomore year in high school, maybe after my junior year.
Yeah.
So we were connected through that. But then, so I played with them when I came back from college that first year, and I'd see Smo when he was umping. He and Smoker. That was the thing. So Smoker is brother Dan.
Yeah. And
Dave was always David. But the thing is, back then when people still read newspapers, there was in the paper, in the agate type, at the back page each day in the summer, they'd list all of the baseball games with the umpiring assignments.
Yeah.
And so that's where the umps would know who they were, what games they were umping. And we'd always look, and Coach Smo and Dan were always an umping tandem, and it was Smoker and David. That's what they went by. So you'd look down through, and you'd see if Smoker and David were going to be umping your games.
Yeah.
So I'd see him at that, and then once I stopped playing in college, I didn't keep playing town ball. I think I played one more season after that, and then we reconnected. I think late in my near the end of college, and oddly enough, we reconnected via softball. Now I know that's poison words among baseball guys, and I wouldn't be caught dead playing softball now. But then I played on a softball team, the Pyramid Lounge, out of the village, with a bunch of the same guys. I mean, Mike Whitmire, Al Whitmire were on it, Dan Gorman was on it, and Coach Smo played for the East Eden Tavern.
Okay.
And it was him and Dan and Smoker, and I think a lot of guys who they had probably played Boston town ball with had now sort of moved to the age where they were playing softball, but they were so competitive.
Ooh.
And so we'd play these games, and I mean, it was knockdown dragouts, and then we'd all hang out and have beers together afterwards.
That's so cool.
And it was, yeah. So, I mean, that's sort of that connection. Then I sort of lost touch for a while once I moved out here to Minnesota, and then we reconnected really through Facebook.
Okay.
And oddly enough, this is I started playing baseball again when I was 50. Oh. I'm 56 now. So there's amateur baseball out here is huge. Town ball, there's over 300 town ball teams in the state of Minnesota.
Whoa.
And it's wildly popular. And So there's town ball leagues, but then there's a senior league if you're 35 and over that still matches all the town ball teams, but it's for the guys who've kind of aged out of town ball but want to keep playing.
Yep.
So I had a buddy ask me, found out I had played in college and I was done coaching my kids and, had some free time. So I started playing again. And so I messaged Coach Smo and said, I'm playing ball again. And we'd connect every once in a while. If I was at a cool ballpark or something like that, I'd send him a picture of it and let him know. And the crazy thing, and this might choke me up even thinking about this. He, how Facebook is. So every year on my birthday, I'd always get a message from him. Never fail. Always wishing me happy birthday, and always more than just like a happy birthday. There was always some little sort of comment, looks like you're doing well or something like that. And my birthday was just a couple weeks ago. It was early December 8th. And Coach Smo messaged me on my birthday just the other day. And the message this year was, you haven't changed a bit. And the funny thing was I messaged him back from that, and I said, not true. I said, and here's why. I can now hit the breaking ball.
Oh.
And he laughed at that and said, well, obviously you're going with the pitch, because we used to struggle with that. He would work. I was a dead pull hitter all the time.
Yeah.
And the breaking ball just would flummox me in high school, and he'd try and get me to go with the pitch. And I just wouldn't do it. That wasn't my mentality. I just wanted to rip that thing. And it was always open the hips and take that big swing and pull hitter. And so breaking balls were just my bane. And so I joked with him. I said, well, I don't know that I've necessarily learned to go with the pitch, but I've definitely become more patient now that I'm older. Or it could just be that my reflexes are so much slower that I'm still trying to pull the ball and I'm slow enough that now I'm hitting it the opposite field. And he chuckled at that too.
Yeah.
And that was the hard part about it, is like to then find out that he was gone. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I literally just messaged this guy a couple days ago, and it was out of the blue. He messaged me with just that big-hearted kindness. And it really, I think that triggered so many memories, and really is what got me jumping on to Twitter and Facebook and wanting to get people to remember them and for me to share memories.
Yeah, that's it. That's I think what a great picture that paints of who Coach Smo was at his core. That's really good stuff.
Oh, for sure.
Man, oh man. I guess, and we were talking earlier about he really ran a tight ship.
Oh yeah.
And I wonder, and maybe I'm reaching a little bit here. Were there any lessons that you learned while playing for Coach Smo that ever ended up translating into your law career at all?
Let's see. It's definitely it's commitment and loyalty for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And that if you say you're gonna do something, you do it.
Yeah.
And it's certainly hard work. You don't have to be brilliant to be a lawyer. You have to be willing to put in the work and the preparation. Yeah. And so, I think those types of things that I, learned from Coach Smo and from a lot of other coaches along the way are things that I would say would have translated to my law career. And certainly competitiveness. I'm a trial lawyer. I'm a litigator. So there's that element of competition and winning and losing for sure. And his Coach Smo's competitive nature's in there.
That's outstanding. That's really good. Well, I'm going to tell you what. I better give you a chance to kind of empty your pockets, as we like to say. And,
man.
What other stories you got cooking for us that you'd like
let's
to share?
See, man. How much time you got?
Well, let her roll, baby. Let her roll.
Well, okay. So I already talked about the whistling fungos. That was just crazy. The one I shared on Facebook and Twitter about the never been to a beach.
Oh,
that was the talk every year. And I was wrong on my counting. When I looked at how old he was in his obit, I realized that he wasn't saying I'm 40 years old. He would cross his arms and he'd look at us and he'd say, "Gentlemen, I'm 34 years old and I've never been to a beach." in my life. I wouldn't know what to do at a beach. And we'd all be like laughing up our sleeves, like, well, you don't know what you're missing, man. And the point of that was telling us that during baseball season, your commitment was baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And in the summer, especially, you were playing on the weekends. You weren't going to the beach. And so that was his point of pride. Like, baseball is a commitment. And he'd tell us that story, and we would just like laugh, and, not out loud. I mean, we'd all be stone faced, and then we'd be laughing about it afterwards. Like, yeah, you've never been to a beach. That was one that definitely stuck. Rick mentioned the no black cleats, or the only black cleats, no white cleats for sure. This is back when we wore stirrups.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, we would have Jeff McClymans was his JV coach, and McClymans was in charge of the whole program of teaching everybody the proper way to put on baseball pants to show the right amount of stirrup that he said he learned in his days playing in the Tigers organization. Nice. That was pretty funny. The Boston Town Ball stuff, when Smoker would come ump, was definitely, that was fun. And I mean, the characters, I mean, that Boston baseball history is really something. And, like I said, I was a kid jumping in with these guys, and we'd play these games. And then in the middle of the game, around the seventh inning, usually someone would go around and you'd pass the hat around the crowd to gather up money to pay the umps.
No kidding.
Yeah. That's how we raised the money to pay the umpires. And so if Smoker and David were our umping crew, everybody throwing a little bit more money so that they'd get a little bit more out of that. And then, but then we'd all end up down at Murphy's Tavern, that was just down the hill from there, which it's an okay story to tell now. The drinking age was only 18 then, and I was probably, I might have been 16 or 17, but they'd look the other way. I remember the first time I went, they're like, no, you're coming with us. I'm like, I'm not old enough. And they're like, oh, yes, you are. If you're playing for the team, you get to come into Murphy's.
Yeah.
So hopefully I'm not getting anybody in trouble there. What else? Oh, I remember he had a rule, no beards. He was the only beard allowed on the team.
Oh, okay.
If you look back at some of those old pictures, you see a lot of facial hair, a lot of mustaches. You'd see like Tim Hopkins and Craig Paz, Bobby Brunner. There were some guys who could grow some serious stashes. But the rule was no beards. And the only guy I know who got away with having a beard was Al Whitmire. For some reason, Smo let Al Whitmire keep his beard. But everybody else had to shave it. And I to try and look older, I would grow a beard in the wintertime. Yeah. And come baseball season, I'd shave it off because I knew what the rule was. And what was funny then, I was thinking about this too. And you think tight ship and something like this would never happen, but we used to have dip and chewing tobacco on the bench.
Oh, is that right? No.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't, the only thing you signed at the time was it wasn't no tobacco products. It was no smoking. You signed that when you signed your commitment at the beginning of the season, no drinking, no smoking. And to buy tobacco products, then you only had to be 16.
Okay.
So guys could have like tins of dip and pouches. I mean, it's not like we chewed a lot, but I mean, every once in a while it was there, and that's he didn't have a problem with it. At least as far as I could tell. Maybe we hid it from him. I don't remember. I'm trying to think. Oh, the other big thing with him was, and I think this is common among a lot of coaches, but it's you always run on and off the field.
Yeah.
If you stand up from the bench, if you're on your way to your position, you run and you don't stop running till you get there.
Yeah.
Now you don't have to sprint. I mean, it's not one of those things, but you run on and off.
Yeah.
And I think he probably even had his pitchers do it. If I remember correctly. Like these days, usually a pitcher can at least walk off.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, that's something I still do now, and I think of that every game I play when I'm running, when I get up out of the dugout, even an old creaky guy like me.
Yeah,
I still make sure I at least a light jog until I get to my spot. And I think of Coach, and actually it just dawned on me, I think of Coach Smo every time I do that.
That's going to be a great tribute to him as you continue playing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm trying to, the last thing, I don't want to sound like I'm telling a self-serving story, the other memory I have is remember I told you you do these wicked fungos.
Yeah.
So my junior year, we're playing at West Seneca West, I'm pretty sure. And it's pregame warm-ups. And this was one of the games. This was at the time when I was platooning with Mike Williamson. And this was going to be my game. This was one of my games to start. And so we're in pregame warm-ups, and he's hitting fungos, but we're both at the position.
Okay.
And Willie's in front of me. It's Willie's turn to field the fungo from Coach Smo. And he rips one. I mean, always ripping them hard as he can. He rips one, but it gets under it a little bit. And so it's a line drive instead of going to the ground. And it comes fast. And Willie's in front of me, and it tips off the top of Willie's glove, and I'm behind him.
Ooh.
And I didn't have time to react, and it catches me square in the mouth.
Oh.
Mush, bang. Knocked out my 2 front teeth. Broke one off and knocked the other one so it's pointing backwards. And I just dropped like a rock. And Smo, of course, comes running out, and he's like, "Oh, my God, you all right? This is, I'm so sorry." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm okay. I mean, you didn't mean it to happen." And he's like, "Well, you got to go get that fixed." So my mom was there, and she's in tears. And there was a guy, this Mr. Prohaska, Scott Prohaska's dad, Ray Prohaska, who was a coach of the Bills at the time. He was there, so we got in his car. My mom was too scared to drive. She was so upset. Part of it, I think, was because I had just gotten my braces off like a few months earlier.
Oh, no.
And so they raced me to the dentist. He takes the nerve out of the broken tooth. He pushes the one pushed backwards back into my mouth. And he's like, "Well, that's all we can do for now." And I'm like, "Well, when can I play baseball again?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, when do you want to play?" I'm like, could I go back and play today? Yeah. And remember, I don't know if you still have the rule, but yeah, if you left because of an injury, you couldn't come back unless you had a release, a doctor's note saying you could play. And the dentist was a friend of our family's. He's like, "Yeah." He's like, if you want to play today, I'll let you play today. So he gets out his prescription pad, and he writes, "Scott is okay to play baseball." And then he writes, "Play ball," and he underlines it, an exclamation point. So I drive back, and the game has started, but they're not done. It's sort of probably the middle of the game. And I come walking into the dugout, and Smo was like, "What are you doing here?"
Seriously. Yeah.
And I said, I'm back. I'm here to play." He's like, "No, you're not playing." I'm like, "I've got a release. The dentist says I can play." And he's like, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Coach, let me play."
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, I said, I feel like I'm okay. And he's like, "All right, I'll let you do it." And so he did. So he let me go back to the game. I don't even remember if I played well in the game or not. But I got to bat, played in the field, and again, I feel bad because I'm telling this self-serving story, but he let someone who had the desire do it. Yeah. And he felt bad for what had happened, which was just crazy. Sure. But he once I was back, he's like, "All right, you can go play." And I don't know if it's true, but someone says that he told the story of the playing with a broken tooth from warm-ups to some subsequent teams. I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that probably endeared me to him for some level. Maybe, who knows? Maybe that's why I ended up captain the following year.
Well, that's passion sees passion there, I think. And
yeah, I think so. But just everything about him. I mean, the pocket I would empty is that the connection with him was so much more than baseball.
Mm.
I mean, he really, he was a hard ass while he was coaching. He would laugh and have fun, but he was still very much your coach. And you realized after you graduated that he wanted to have a relationship with you beyond that. He wanted to be your buddy.
Yeah, yeah.
And so he cherished that opportunity that once we were done playing, if we could see him on the ball field or out in the town or something like that, he loved talking with us and loved visiting with us and keeping in touch. And I think, like so many people have said, he's a single guy. He didn't have kids. We were all his kids.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, I mean, to think the number of years he coached, and the number of players that he's touched. I mean, I hope everybody has fond memories of him, the way a lot of us do.
That's outstanding. While you're saying that, I can't help but think, like, obviously, like, just the culture of sports in general has changed, and and things aren't quite so disciplinarian, so to speak. And you're thinking, like, well, he's so old school. I don't know if how he would have coached today. I think he would have been a phenomenal coach, because I think he would have, like, those people skills would have come into play earlier. It wouldn't have waited
Yeah.
until after graduation.
Oh, I think he would have been an amazing coach. One, I mean, you're in a different world now. I mean, where you've got kids who are playing baseball year round.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I mean, as far as dedication to the sport, I think he would welcome that. I think he probably wouldn't have been too much of a fan of to the extent players are now really trying to use it as a vehicle to promote themselves to move on to the next level.
Yeah.
I mean, for him, it's about the team
Mm-hmm.
and what you're doing. But I think he would have understood that that's probably driven sometimes by parents as much as anybody else.
Yeah.
But he would have been a good coach at any time, because you're learning. The life with Coach Smo wasn't about the fundamentals of baseball that he was teaching you. It was about bigger things, about character things. It was about about how to be a good teammate, and that translates to everything.
Yeah.
That's not just baseball.
That's for sure.
And how to push yourself. I mean, how to be willing to push yourself a little bit further than you might otherwise go.
Yeah. Sounds like those ground balls for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, the last thing that I want to throw out there and pull out, I'm going to tell you what, if we ever get our hands on a movie crew, I think I would love to dive into those Boston town leagues and have a movie tell that story.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you, I don't know. So I came along later, obviously, but he was already legendary among the guys when I was playing out there. I mean, someone like a Timmy Hopkins, he was Rick Sambrato's class. I mean, they knew the stories of Smo when he had been playing out there. And actually, one of the reasons I played out there was a guy named Donnie McGee.
Okay.
Who he had gone to Eden High School and went to Syracuse on a football scholarship.
Oh, wow.
Great. I mean, an amazing athlete. And he graduated, I think, in 73. So McGee is probably like the perfect bridge. I have no idea where he is now, but he ran the SEBA team that Boston had. And we didn't have a lot of summer options when we played. I mean, we didn't have a Legion team, and especially the Village of Hamburg, other than the junior baseball league, there weren't a lot of teams. There was a Quad County team that Pete Galuzza ran. But so Donnie McGee ran this SEBA team, and I started playing for him. And what I told him was, I knew he also ran the town ball team. He was the player manager on that town ball team. And I said, listen, can I come play on that team? He's like, you're awfully young and we don't really need guys. And I said, I'll tell you what, I'm not asking to play. Can I come hang out? Can I come practice with you guys when you practice? Can I be in the dugout with the team? And if comes a time when maybe there's a chance to maybe get me in at bat or get me into a game and you can do it, great, but no promises.
Yeah. And
so we did, and then that led to me playing, and I got to know those guys and the culture out there. I mean, that was like town ball is out here. I mean, this little small town, and people we didn't have the big crowds like they apparently had when Smo and Smoker were playing, but we'd have people come, walking up the hill. They'd bring their lawn chairs. They'd watch a doubleheader. They'd tell stories. I mean, they'd come down to Murphy's afterwards. I would think you could talk to Bobby Brunner would probably be able to give you some of the stories too.
Yeah.
But yeah, that Boston was something. I mean, in Hamburg, varsity baseball was interesting in that you had players from different spots all coming to that high school.
Yeah.
So you had sort of the armor school kids, and I'm not sure what their little league maybe it was Carnegie Scranton. You had the Village of Hamburg kids that were the Hamburg Junior Baseball League. And then you had the Boston kids who went to Boston Valley School and played Boston Little League. So you had all this melding of different baseball leagues with no one true feeder system. But maybe that made the teams better. because you
Sure.
had a whole bunch of different styles of play and different players coming together.
I can see
But
that.
the Boston guys were always so good, man. They were really good baseball players.
Yeah, that's a hot spot. That's
Yeah.
interesting. Wow. Oh man. Well, I'll tell you what. This could turn into 3 hours real easy, and I want to be respectful of your time, and we
Oh
appreciate
no,
it.
I want to be respectful of yours. So I can't thank you enough for willing to listen to an old guy go on and on. I mean, remember, I mean, Sambrano and I, you're talking about when we were playing, there were still wood bats around.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. I don't
Yeah,
think I realized that. You're right. Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, and I want to tell you, I've loved what you've been doing with the program. Your social media presence. I started following you guys on Twitter a couple years ago, just because I loved seeing it.
Yeah.
And so the passion that you put into it, I can't thank you enough. And what I would really love to see, and maybe this is what comes out of the good that comes out of losing Coach Smo,
Hmm.
is that the alumni come together. I mean, you've got a strong sort of more recent alumni, guys who played for you for sure.
Yeah.
But if there's a way for these old coots like me and Sambrado and Ed Bates and the Sardinias and Timmy Hopkins to get us connected and doing what we can to support the program, whether it's telling stories or well,
Yeah.
you could put together a heck of a round table of storytellers. And just Timmy Hopkins alone
Yeah.
would, oh man, he that guy would have you in stitches.
Oh man, I cannot wait. I mean, that's ultimately, I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. That's our vision, that's really our vision. And there's no doubt that some of our current guys, are going to dip in on, these interviews, and they're going to start to, feel a little bit of pride of, carrying the flag of, the 80 team and the 83 team and, what that represents the next time they step on the Howe field. And it's pretty.
Yeah, for sure. Well, the good news is that Howfield finally has a manageable fence.
Yes, yes.
We
Yeah.
used to play in basically a football field. It was insane.
Yeah,
There
there
was
was
no
no,
such thing as a home run in Howfield unless
no.
you legged it out.
Yeah, you had to. Yeah, boy, yeah. The legendary stories of that old green fence. I mean, maybe if you pulled it right down left field, but other than that, there was no prayer.
Maybe, but that was a tough shot. I'll tell you that.
Yeah,
But I just what you're doing, Derek, with the program is great. And I'll tell you, I mean, if any of your young guys want to connect with any of the old guys, I'm sure any of us would love to share stories. If someone wants to sit and listen to us, we'll talk forever.
yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, I tell you what, and that's the unfortunate part is we lost Coach Smo, but the idea that and say what you want about social media, but the opportunities it's created for us to connect and with Rick last night and stuff, this has just been priceless for me and just extremely thankful. So, oh, buddy, I'll tell you what, make me a promise. The next time you trickle back into Hamburg, you make sure you shoot us a text and
Absolutely, you better believe it. In fact, this may make me get back sooner than I otherwise would have.
I love it. I love it. Well, take care. Happy holidays, and
Thanks, you too, and everybody in the Bulldog family. Happy holidays.
absolutely, Hamburg strong, baby. Hamburg strong.
Absolutely, yeah. Here we go, baby.
All right, take care, my friend, and we'll be talking to
You
you.
too, Derek. Yeah, let's be in touch.
All right.